It's that deep blue lake inside Olympic National Park. The one people talk about because the water is so clear it almost doesn't feel real. If you've been there, you know what I mean. It's calm. Almost too calm. People kayak there, hike the trails, and take photos like nothing bad could ever happen in a place that peaceful. And that's the strange thing, because in 1940 something did. And for nearly 70 years, the lake kept it to itself. One summer morning in 1940, two fishermen were out on the lake. Nothing felt unusual. No bad weather. No reason to think the day would be remembered. As they moved closer to the shore, they noticed something beneath the surface. At first, they thought it was driftwood, just something floating underwater, but it didn't move. So they looked closer. It was a woman. Her body was partially submerged near the edge of the lake. She wasn't tangled in branches. She wasn't weighed down. She was simply there, still and silent. Authorities were called, and when investigators arrived, they immediately realized how little they had to work with. She was fully clothed, but she carried no wallet, no identification, and no personal belongings. There was nothing that explained who she was or how she ended up there. Back then, there were no national missing person databases and no fast way to connect cases across states. If someone went missing and no one pushed for answers, they could disappear quietly. And that's exactly what seemed to have happened here. No family came forward. No missing person report clearly matched her. No one claimed her, so people began calling her something else. The Lady of the Lake. What made this case stranger wasn't just the lack of identity. It was the lake itself. Lake Crescent is unusually deep. The water stays cold year-round, and it has very low levels of bacteria. Investigators in 1940 didn't fully understand what that meant, but they saw the result. Her body hadn't decomposed the way they expected. Time had passed, yet some details were still preserved. This made determining when she entered the water difficult, and made reconstructing what happened even harder. The lake wasn't giving anything away. Eventually, with no answers and no name, the investigation stalled. She was buried as an unidentified person, and the case faded. Years passed, then decades. People kept visiting Lake Crescent, unaware of what had been found there. The story slipped into history, remembered only by a few records and a name without a person attached to it. But the case was never truly closed. It was waiting. By the early 2000s, forensic science had changed. DNA testing, better historical records, and improved methods for re-examining unidentified remains gave investigators tools they never had before. In 2008, nearly 68 years later, the case was reopened. This time, they found something they had never had before: an answer. DNA evidence finally identified the woman found in Lake Crescent. Her name was Hallie Latham Illingworth. She had gone missing in 1937, 3 years before her body was discovered. At the time, her disappearance didn't draw much attention, something that happened far too often, especially to women. There was no clear trail, and eventually she was forgotten. Until science remembered her. Investigators later believed her husband may have been involved, but this part matters. There was no trial. There was no conviction. He died before the case could ever be brought to court. Legally, the case was never resolved. And that matters, because this story isn't about accusations. It's about identity. For nearly 70 years, Hallie was just a mystery beneath the water. A body without a name. A life without recognition. In 2008, that changed. She became a person again. A woman with a name, a history, and a place in the world that could finally be acknowledged. Lake Crescent is still beautiful today. The water looks the same. The mountains haven't moved. People still kayak, still hike, still take photos. Most of them never know what lies beneath that calm surface. Not a legend, not a ghost story, but a reminder that every person deserves to be known. And sometimes the truth doesn't disappear. It just waits. If you enjoyed this story and the history behind it, follow for more real stories worth remembering.